track, yeah. fear. I'm from Black America, it's just another year. You knew the disrespect by your elected puppeteers, but let me show you how to persevere.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy JD Costa.
It's your girl Katniss.
And together we are the Nitty Gritty. Thank you for being back with us. It is September 24th. We are now in the season of fall, autumn, whatever you want to call it. Thanks to this hurricane that's near us, we're actually feeling it a little bit in the Northeast. It's in the 60s all weekend. So, yeah, there was that. And then I was missing my boo all weekend. Getting a little bit ahead of myself on shout-outs, but you was out there celebrating your sister's 40th. Marcia Hawkins turned 40, y'all. And I heard y'all had a heck of a surprise for her. She almost fainted, huh?
Yeah, she did not know we were coming.
Man, y'all did a good job, man. Y'all did that, huh?
We did.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Yeah, Kat back. She back in DC, you know what I'm saying? So, but she was out there in LA kicking it for a solid almost 48 hours and some change. Sound like you had a good time, nice little family girls trip. So that's what's up. And then shout out to Marcia, 40th birthday. She had a lot of support out there and everything, so that's dope.
She did, and the venue was beautiful. I showed you pictures. It was
yeah.
It was up on the hills with the pool, and you can see all the scenic views. It was beautiful. Yes.
And Granny Sue Records is definitely in the building. Shout out a bass drop for them. Yeah, we see you. Granny Sue Records LLC in the house. We love it. So and then actually while we're talking Granny Sue, let's go ahead and shout out the fact that our business sponsor for this series is watching. You can find them on Facebook at Granny Sue Records LLC. You can find them on YouTube at Granny Sue Records. Please go subscribe. When you subscribe to these various channels, including ours, but when you subscribe to these channels, you can help us get monetized when you hit these various pages and they get to 1,000. Half of y'all subscribe and forget. So what's it to you, right? Go there, subscribe. Whether you listen to another song or check out another episode in the Nitty Gritty, whatever you just subscribe and stay subscribed, right? You're gonna watch what you're gonna watch, but subscribe. It helps us out. I mean, it's a free. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe. Now there are pay for subscriptions that you could pay in an enhancement, but just a basic follow, that's free, guys. So just follow and subscribe for free. It doesn't hurt and it helps a whole lot, right? So shout out to them. And if you want to sign a record, do a song, book them, anything of that nature, you already know the email. It's outar2, that's OUTAR numeral 2 at yahoo.com. Hit them up. And that's right, yeah, free. I got my man Brent in the building right now. Columbia, Maryland in the building. What's up, sir? I see you. We always got some of our key favorites up in here. I see Mamie up in here. Clarksville representing right now. Current news. CBC weekend. What's going on this weekend? I think tonight's the last night. Or last night might have been the last night. The Phoenix Awards and all of that. That was going on. Had all kind of people in town. Angela Rye. Roland Martin. There was all kind of folks here. And you had key leaders from all of the Divine Nine. You had all kind of... leaders from various HBCUs meeting to talk about the status of black people in America, to rub shoulders next to the people that help write legislation, our very own Congress, and the various members that represent the black representatives in Congress. So this is something that I think black people should key into more often, especially around key election cycles like now. I mean, every year is a key election cycle, but whenever you're going into a presidential election year, it really shakes some things up. And there's gubernatorial elections going on. We have a senator race going on here in Maryland. So yeah, that's something you really want to chime into. CBC is a huge thing. A lot of times it's those bougie people partying, but they do get a lot of good work done at the same time. So we got to celebrate that. So shout out to CBC weekend going on. Neither I or Kat was there this year, but we'll be there for sure next year. Just schedules got in the way, and there's just a lot of competing interests. It happens sometimes, but I definitely was tuning in virtually to a lot of the different events. Also, it's football season, and as promised, I'll shout over some football scores for you guys. The Giants, they got their butts beat on Thursday night. 49ers dug up in them hard. We see that the Detroit Lions won today. We got the Chargers beat the Vikings. Looks like the Packers, by the skin of their teeth, beat the Saints. Texans whooped the Jaguars 37-17. The Dolphins, they put up Madden scores, all right? 70-20. 70 in football is like, that's like playing Madden, guys. For those that don't know the video game Madden, like those are the kind of scores you put up with a created character. I don't know who was the controller behind the Dolphins today, but they put up 70 Madden style, so shout out to them. Maybe the Twins was playing the Dolphins for some weird reason because that's not their teams. Shout out to the Browns. Y'all won 27-3. Y'all beat the brakes off the Titans. You know what I'm saying? They didn't tighten up today. So, and then we lost 37-3. I mean, we got drilled by the Bills. And I just think Rivera needs to leave, but, you know, whatever. The Colts and the Ravens had a close game. We actually saw part of that game when we went to Nick's Fish House earlier. But it looks like the Colts ended up winning in that last minute in overtime, 22-19. Sorry, Richard. Looks like the Ravens lost. Patriots pulled off a win against the Jets, 15-10. Jets ain't going to do much because that whole Aaron Rodgers thing kind of screwed that up. We see the Seahawks beat the Panthers. Chiefs beat the Bears. And the Cardinals beat the Cowgirls. So thank God we are all saved this week from hearing, "We them boys," because you're not. All right? So, and if you know, Commanders fans, Legacy Redskins fans, our biggest rival is the Cowboys. So therefore, whenever the Cowboys lose, an angel gets their wings. Okay? So that's always good news to see that they lost. But you guys are not here to get the latest football news and hear about, you know, the weather. You're here to get down to the nitty gritty. And if you saw the title of today's show, we're still doing our series, Is It Us Versus Them, where we look at these various systems and we discuss whether or not, is this something that black people can fix for themselves? Is it really the fault of the other people, right? When we say the blame game, is it the government's fault why violence is so bad? Are they lying about the stats? You know, why is it that we're having these key issues, and then looking at the numbers, taking feelings out of it, looking at the numbers, and then trying to have a dialogue about how do we really work together to fix things? And if it is a systems issue, where do we vote? Where do we go to then help change the system to work better for us, right? So today we're talking about black violence. It was a needed conversation. We were going to have it last week, but thanks to the Kurt Franklin thing that Katrina brought to us, we kind of jumped ahead and we talked about an aspect of relationships primarily around fathers. I think we had a good conversation last week too, right? So today we're talking black violence. So we're going to get down to it. First, I'll ask you, Katrina, and then to the audience watching, who do you guys think is at fault when we talk about violence in America, right? Is it us as the black community? Is it the fault of the media, or, is it like propaganda of the media? It could be either or when you talk about media. Or is it the fault of the government, right? Is the government forcing these guns on these young men? I mean, is it, what are these factors you believe that's causing violence to be such an issue in the black community? Katrina, I'll start with you as our people are writing and chiming in on the conversation. But what do you think the big issue is?
I think it's all of them, like always.
Because if they've been watching, they've been seeing that.
I think it's all of them because we know the government plays a role just due to systemic racism, systems in place. Violence is typically created in close proximity to where you live. Mm-hmm. So if you live in a food desert, if you're poor, if you're impoverished, naturally you're going to commit a crime because you feel like you don't have any other outlet to receive natural necessities, or basic necessities rather. Mm-hmm. I still think it's a bit of us, because why would you want to kill someone who looks like you? Why would you not want to be a community, join forces, work together? It's a question we always ask one another. I don't get it. And then, what was the other aspect? It was...
I mean, I think you covered them all. You talked about the government redlining and poor living conditions. You talked about a value on ourselves. So I think you kind of covered the scope.
I think there was one more you mentioned, but okay.
Oh, media.
Oh, yes. Thank you. And it's definitely media and music, because every time I look on a show, I feel like from the time that me and you grew up to now, it's definitely much more violent and graphic. Mm-hmm. People getting shot in the head. They're getting killed very, like heinous acts on TV.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I definitely think that plays a part. And video games.
Yeah, definitely. You see it in the video games, Call of Duty. I'm guilty. I play Warzone all the time. But yeah, I mean, those all are factors. And, you know, as people are chiming in, maybe writing results, I wanted to just kind of like share some stats on crime in general. We're going to drill down specifically to the black community. But, you know, we like to talk about it from a broader advance and then the drill down so that way you can kind of see the comparison. Because there's some things that the black community gets accused of, and then it's like, well, no, black folks ain't the only ones doing it. So why do we make it a black thing media-wise when we're pushing this narrative, right? So I like to fight the narrative sometimes as well. But when we're just looking at crime in general, violence in America, the FBI notes that various factors might influence an area's crime rate, which is population density and economic conditions, as Katrina said, right? So those are key factors in violence. And when they look at, you know, the types of crimes that are committed, and this is a report done by Pew Research. The source was the FBI's reports on violence. U.S. crime rate per 100,000 people by offense type in 2019. That's the last report that we have on file. Number one crime is theft or larceny. Then next, and that's what they call property crimes. And these are not, they weren't violent in any nature. They didn't harm a person. There's someone stealing. And we see that a lot. Like there's these videos that go viral with the kids taking stuff and all of that. That's been an issue. Can you look at the light right there? All right, cool. It's white. I saw my thing spinning, so I just wanted to make sure it wasn't spinning for my folks watching. But you know, so we see that that's the most popular crime, stealing, and we see the videos, the kids running into Gucci and jumping out, crazy stuff like that. So we know that that becomes an issue. Next to it is then burglary, right? Breaking into cars. That's a huge issue in DC. I know it's a big issue in cities across the U.S. I know LA's always had an issue with that. We know that we have that issue in like Philadelphia, New York. If you park in DC, you can almost know how to avoid it. Your car was broken into, my car was broken into. Both occasions, in my case, I actually had tinted windows, but I was parked near an alley. Normally when you're parked near an alley, what happens is that's a dangerous place to be because then somebody could break into your car window and then they got an escape route. Instead of being on the main street, they'll run into the alley, right? And that happened in both cases. I was able to trail my book bag, your book bag into the nearby alley. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, obviously there's other things where you almost invited. Shouldn't be the case, but they can see an actual book bag in your back seat, stuff like that. In Atlanta, they're breaking into cars, checking glove departments because they're hoping to find a gun. A lot of times that's what they report in Atlanta. But then aggravated assault is the number one violent crime, right? And that happens at a rate about 250 out of 100,000 people, whereas larceny and theft is like 1,500 out of 100,000 people. And then next to that, you have motor vehicle theft, and that kind of goes along with burglary, things of that nature. And then you have robbery, rape, which are very low on the list, and at the very bottom you have murder. But sometimes when you're listening to the news reports, they'll have you think everybody's getting shot every day. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of violence happening. We're seeing our fair share of violence in the DC area, but maybe the news is exaggerating because, you know, the news makes money off advertisement revenue. So people have to watch. And people tune in when they hear, oh man, all these people are dying and getting shot. And this is crazy out here. These young folks are wild. They really are wild. It really is crazy. But when you look at the reporting and the numbers, maybe it's not as crazy as they sensationalize, right? And then two other reports, and then I'm going to ask some quick questions. Auto thefts, when we look at reported crimes, right? Because in our community, we have this thing about snitching. Oh, don't be a snitch. Don't say nothing to nobody. You know what I'm saying? Don't say this. Don't say nothing. Don't be no snitch. We have this big thing about snitching. Nobody say nothing. But then that hurts us in a way too. When you look at reported crimes, the most reported thing is motor vehicle theft. People are quick to report that one. Sometimes they even make that one up because they can't pay that car note anymore. So they make up a theft. Aggravated assault is reported at a rate of 52%, right? Because, and then what happens is you'll see like people getting into fights in the street. Also, you're talking about your domestic assaults, right? Also falls into the same category. So those typically get reported. Then we have household burglary and trespassing. And that's an easy one to report because when it happened, it's like, hey, what you doing here? Calling the cops, right? Even after I shoot you, I'm going to call the cops. And then we have robbery. And then things like that you think should be reported more often, you start seeing towards the bottom, like simple assault, rape and sexual assault only at a rate of 33%. And then you got personal theft, larceny, where it's like, oh, shoot, maybe nothing's going to happen. And I understand why people do it. And then you have household theft, right? So those get reported. Now, the thing is, most likely to be cleared by police, meaning which cases are being solved. So murder wasn't even in the top list, right, of actually being reported. But believe it or not, it does have the highest rate of being solved because it gets the most money pushed towards it. So they solve violent crimes like murder at a rate of 61%. Aggravated assault gets cleared at a rate of 52%. And then rape only 32%, right? This is why so many people grow up with all these issues. They get raped, it doesn't get reported, or they never solve the case. There are so many people that can evade those rape charges. It's crazy. It's scary, actually. And then robbery at a rate of 30%. But the thing that people are reporting, such as larceny, burglary, and motor theft, they get solved at a rate less than 20%. But they're the most reported thing. So, that does take into account when we're looking at murders. And we're looking at black violence. Now, those are just general murder rate, criminal rates across the U.S. But now when we start talking about black people, this is where some of these new stats will take into the part. I'll pause right here. Any thoughts on some of that data?
On the stats?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't shocking. I wonder from those stats how it aligns to people who are actually convicted or who've taken the plea deal.
That's a good point, because just because they solve a case doesn't mean they necessarily clear it. And I hate to use TV as a reference, but a good example would be The Wire, right? Normally to clear it, they have to get at least to clear a murder or any case, they have to get a charge. Once they get a charge out, it doesn't matter if they're then convicted through the criminal justice system. They got the charge, right? They got enough evidence where they can say, hey, I'm charging this person with murder. I'm charging this person with theft. Then what happens is it has to then go to court. Now, they may charge somebody, but that don't mean all the people that were actually guilty of the crime or what happens, then that actually takes spot. So there's a difference between charging and convicting. And I didn't even think to get those stats, but that's a good point, because that's just showing what they charge. That's not showing what they convict. Typically, though, the FBI, they convict, charge, and sentence at a rate of 97%. Their cases, though, but they're only going to take major RICO cases. They're going to take like cartel, the mafia, white collar crime, those big cases. They're not going to go after who shot Pookie in Chicago unless they can tie it to a larger conspiracy like gang or something like that. You was about to read a comment? No?
Oh, your dad's. Yeah, he said, that's okay if you're a thief. But I don't run with thieves, so if I see you, yes, I will call the police. No honor amongst thieves, and I'm down with the thick as thieves. Yeah, I know in the black community there is this thing about not being a snitch, but I think that it's complicated. I can see why someone wouldn't want to snitch, because by snitching, you put your life at risk and your family's life at risk if you live in a certain environment. Yeah.
I remember in like certain parts of DC, they don't want you to say nothing or even comment. And it's funny with that whole criminality mindset, right? Because in one breath they say, "Hey man, don't be snitching, don't be telling." But then these young criminals now, they post it all on Instagram and TikTok. They show you what you're doing, but then at the same time, they'll threaten your whole family to light y'all up if y'all tell on them. It's like, wait a minute. You should light yourself up then, because you just committed the crime for everybody to see. So why are you so upset with me? Like, that's always been interesting to me. One stat that we see here from Statista, murders are often committed by people aged 17 to 30. According to David Hemingway, a professor at Harvard School for Public Health, most mass shootings were carried out by white shooters, according to informatics group Statista. So we know that, because everybody always talk about, black people are doing this, but why by white folks? Well, we do know that when it comes to mass shootings, they are more so carried out by whites. But then there's some other stats that are coming to mind. So as of 2023, Mississippi was the state with the highest gun violence per 100,000 residents in the United States at 33.9%, followed by Louisiana, in comparison to Massachusetts, which had a gun violence rate of only 3.4%, the lowest of all the states, right? And then when we start looking at some other things from the Violence Project, they said men are responsible for 98% of mass shootings. And according to analysts from Everytown for Gun Safety, they're the ones that kind of led that whole March for Your Lives thing here in D.C. a few years back.
I remember that.
Yeah, we was there,
Yeah.
right?
I want to say to the viewers, apologize if y'all like, man, Kat seems low energy. I actually haven't slept, so just apologize to y'all.
Yeah.
I haven't slept at all in like more than 24 hours.
Yeah. I'm surprised. I should have got you a coffee or something, but then no need for you to be up. When this is over, you need to be able to go to sleep. So, just bear with us. She in it though, y'all. She in it. And then looks like 94% of the 240 mass shootings from 2023. No, sorry, that was 2022. Those were done by men. Also, gun ownership rates vary significantly across the country, reflecting a diverse range of culture, legal, and historical facts. The United States has the highest gun ownership rate, with 120.5 firearms per 100 people. So literally, we have 20 more guns than 100 people for every 100 people. Then you have places like Yemen. They follow behind with only 52.8 firearms per 100 people. So that's the closest one on the list. So you have United States number one, and then Yemen is so far behind. They're only like half of the people you come across have gun ownership, and that's just the people who register their guns. We're not even talking about the fact in the United States there's a lot of people who don't even register their weapons. So the number is probably really higher. Then when we start looking at specifically black and brown people, right, we see that gun homicides are on the rise in the United States, with young and black and brown experiencing the highest rates. So young black Americans ages between 15 to 34 experience the highest rates of gun homicides across all demographics. And I know a lot of times we like to talk about police brutality and mass shootings, but that's not who's shooting Ray Ray and them in Chicago. Mm-hmm. That's not who's killing Pookie and Junebug down the street here in D.C. It's some young black man in Southeast shooting another young black man. And in some cases, like the 14-year-old we talked about earlier in the year, he went to go kill a young man on the bus. The gun jammed. Mm-hmm. His retaliation to failing to execute another young black boy was, I'm going to kill his 18-year-old sister. Shot her in the head. She didn't even see the bullet coming. So obviously the violence was met for the younger brother, which is crazy that a seventh grader is being targeted by 14 and 16-year-olds to get killed, execution style. They went up there with a mask and everything, 2 guns pointed. Somebody paid the pastor because that young man escaped that, but then the sister was killed as a retaliation. Like, well,
who paid what, the pastor?
Oh no, that's just something that say paid the pastor, meaning when you have like a blessing or like something that's supposed to happen to you don't happen. It's like somebody must have paid tithes that day because the angels were watching. But unfortunately, the sister got caught. I
wouldn't even say that because the blood was still upon that house.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Then what's sad is black Americans are 10 times more likely than white Americans to die by gun homicide.
I believe that to be true.
So, when we talk about these disparities, I mean, these are the facts, right? In 2020, 12,000, just a little over 12,000 black Americans were killed with guns compared to 7,000 white Americans. Now, the thing that you got to really think about with that number is it wasn't just double per se. It's actually worse than that because black Americans only make up 13% of the U.S. population, whereas white people make up like 45%. They're still the majority. So it's like they're closer to like, I think it was 55%. I inverted the number, right? So when you do it by percentage, our percentages are way up in regards. So those are scary. And keep in mind, black Americans only make up 12.5% of the U.S. population, but they were victims in 61% of all gun homicides. Let that sink in. We're only 12.5% of the U.S. population, but we're 61% of all gun homicides. So then you got to ask yourself, when the Republicans say stuff like, well, all the gun violence is in the black community, are they really lying? And I'm not saying I'm a card-carrying Republican. I'll vote for Hogan, though, if he puts his hat in the race come February for presidency and let him run. Like, I'm not a fan of Nikki Haley or Tim Scott, but they'll make good vice presidents for him. if he decided to run. But that aside, when people are saying that we're committing more crimes, and don't get me wrong, when it comes to black on black violence, that's somewhat of a myth in the sense that every race or demographic kills in proximity, but we killing each other. You know what I'm saying? I know you always tell me all the time, and some of your friends, there's certain parts of Cleveland, you're like, oh, we'll need to go down there. Yeah. They got the best barbecue spots. But you'd be like, I don't know, Juan, if we should go down there because they get to shooting.
I think that's every city in America. There's always a rough neighborhood, typically is aligned to, or people in their mind think it's synonymous with black people. And those are typically the people that are killing each other because they don't have a lot of resources. But I feel like part of that is because there's a lack of community. Yeah. If you had community, you would not feel as though you're lacking because you have the wherewithal, the gumption, the assumption, the being used to being vulnerable with your neighbor and saying, hey, I need help. I need you to see if you can babysit, tomorrow. Hey, I'm short on money. I may need some help for dinner tonight. But we have no community. I don't even remember the last, community outing. And then also I feel like there isn't a male presence. So if a young man sees gang activity or if he's being bullied, he's more prone to potentially turn to a gun for protection because he's never necessarily been taught or encouraged to use these instead. Mm-hmm. So, like we said, there are influences like media and stuff. So, I just want to know why there's so many guns in the streets and why, with mass shootings, etc., hasn't the federal government done something about it?
And this next stat and what you just said kind of correlate together because at the end of the day, there is a responsibility to the system. Why are we allowing so many guns? Because sometimes I order stuff off of Temu and it gets delayed because you have customs double check the package. You see what I'm saying? And hold everything up. So obviously, and we've all gone through TSA when traveling. Oh, trust me, they checking everything. So we know who's bringing in the guns. It ain't that many of us that have boats and vessels and shipping companies. Oh, we got hair companies out the wazoo. Black women got those on lock. We got barbershops. We got people coming up with an LLC for cupcakes and everything like that. But last time I checked, I don't know any black-owned gun stores. I don't know too many black-owned shipping companies. Not last mile. We're talking about international global shipping. That's typically Asian ran and white ran. A lot of them originating out of China and Russia. Honestly, when you look at shipping, right? Ain't too many shipping giants coming out of the black community. So you got to understand, like, okay, so when these guns are coming in, where are they coming from, right? And then, it's not just black people. 60% of gun deaths among Hispanic and Latino people are gun homicides. So, we're taking out suicide, accidental death, right? And then this other stat, speaking to the system, once again, black Americans are 3 more times likely than white Americans to be fatally shot by police. Now, when we start breaking down the numbers, once again, it's not a simple apple to orange. You got to keep in mind, black people only make up 12.5% of the nation. White people make up about 55% of the nation. We get pulled over. We've talked about this before in the Nitty Gritty Show. When it comes to being stopped by the police, we're actually all being stopped by police around the same, to about the same degree, right? Mm-hmm. White, black, male, whatever. We get arrested around the same rate. So there was a myth that we get arrested more, not necessarily true. We may get convicted more. We may get more harsher charges when it comes to sentencing and stuff like that. But as far as the initial arrest or interaction with the police, they're about the same. But we're less of the population. So that means if we're 3 times more likely to be shot, but we're all being stopped around the same rate, then there's obviously racial bias in how the police deal with us. And this has been a conversation that's been exhausted, but it cannot be ignored when we talk about black violence, right? Because that's contributing to these homicide deaths when it comes to gun violence. It's not the majority, as we discussed earlier with all the gun violence amongst our young people, but we can't exclude the fact that we're 3 times more likely to be shot by police than anybody else, right? And then if you look at a stat from 2015, half of all the gun homicides took place in just 127 cities across the country. only 127 cities. Gun homicides are concentrated in relatively small number of neighborhoods in these cities, which have been historically under-resourced, and racially segregated. So now we're seeing the history of redlining taking effect into where we're seeing the gun violence. Think about it. Here in D.C., ain't nobody getting shot really in Bethesda like that. I mean, every blue moon something triples out there. But for the most part, in those neighborhoods in Bethesda, people ain't getting shot. If you in Loudoun County, you ain't getting shot. I don't hear about too many people getting shot coming out of Maestros. I hear folks say all the time, oh yeah, I got a gun, because you just never know when they're going to roll up on you. But let's be honest. In D.C., if you guys know the area, 8th Street, which is where a lot of the black clubs and kind of like the black place to be hangout wise, that's where a lot of the gun violence is happening. That's where Redskins players are being robbed and shot. We had that situation, the Redskin player got robbed and shot. He was on 8th Street. There's a reason why if I go to 8th Street, I'm not there after 9 o'clock. Because there's an old song that said the freaks come out at night. But in this case, the hood cats come out at night. So I know as for me and my house, we be home normally before 9 o'clock. And if I am out past 9 o'clock, I'm at a restaurant somewhere. Wouldn't you say? I mean, what, a restaurant or a friend's house where I ain't worried about being shot, because the people we hang out with don't be shooting folks, right? So yeah, these are some scary thoughts on the numbers. And then dealing with women, and Katrina, I want your thought on this, because as a woman, you can speak to this better than I can. I'm not a woman. But women of color are more likely than their white counterparts to be shot and killed with firearms. Period. Black women are twice as likely as white women to be fatally shot by an intimate partner. So now we're talking about, so then when people say, and men, you just got to eat this, black men, when you hear black women say, that's why I'm getting me a white man, because these black jokers be crazy, they be willing to kill you. And we, first thing we want to say is black men, we're protectors, we're lovers, and that's true. But then the stats say that our sisters are more likely to be fatally shot by an intimate partner. The guy that they're having sex with, the guy that they're hanging out with, or whatever they got going on, our crazy behinds are the ones shooting and killing these women. So when there's an apprehension about a woman's safety with her intimate partner, and we know more likely, because we've done the stats, black women more than any other demographic are more likely to be with someone of the same race and color. More than anybody. So we know more than likely that intimate partner is probably another black person. And they're saying that they're twice as likely to be shot and killed by an intimate partner. We got to check ourselves. We got to eat that, black men. You can't blame it on the government at that point. It's what's going on in our psyche that we got to kill our own women, right? American Indian and Alaska Native women are killed by intimate partners at a rate of 4.3 out of 100,000, compared with 1.5 for white women. So even they are darn near twice as likely to be killed by their own people other than someone else. So there's just some numbers. You got to eat that. Guns are used in more than half of all the homicides of women and are disproportionately used against black women. Even when firearms are not used to kill or injure, they are used to threaten women at alarming rates. 4.5 million women alive today have reported being threatened by a firearm. So with that, Katrina, just what are some quick thoughts in that observance on those numbers? And women watching, chime in. I'll be happy. I'll be not happy, because this is not happy to have to hear how you guys feel about that. But I'll be curious to understand.
You have too much violence. And the fact that you have an intimate partner, somebody you love, who is more likely to report you've been threatened by a firearm. Or guns are not only used to kill, they're used to control.
And and then something else, I hear you there, Herman. And rest in peace to my late grandfather, Richard Stroman. He did say that all the time. Nothing good in the streets after midnight, per Richard Stroman. Absolutely. And with that, I think part of the issue when we look at violence, particularly in our community towards our women, I think it's how it's glorified in media. To the point that you made earlier, think about how many shows, even when they're trying to tell the truth of a reality, because that's fair. I've criticized Tyler Perry for years for some of his stuff, because I'm like, you're helping perpetuate it to a certain extent. But then he is telling a real life story, what happens amongst these relationships. So in one breath, it's like, I understand the storytelling. Then it's wonder, like, then you have to almost question, like, well, how can we use the storytelling to create a narrative that's healthier? But more specifically, I'll point towards rap music, and now I know I'm sounding like, some of the elders from the early '90s when they blame rap for everything. But then when you're looking at gun violence up, you do see a correlation to rap. I mean, if we're being honest, we do see a correlation to rap, and we see the music videos where we desensitize our love and care of black women. When you start pouring liquor on them and treating them like objects, right? It's no different than a vase that you could just break. And I think that's how some of our men view our black women. They're just objects to be, and we objectify. It's like, yeah, she got big butt, big booty titties. Yeah, girl, what that mouth do? And I know it hurts the ears to hear me say stuff like that, but that's how black men, have objectified black women in a lot of the popular rap. Not in all rap. You got J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, Common. You got a lot of guys pushing some really positive things about love and how we support our sisters. And how, love yourself in your natural body, yada, yada, yada. But you know what's getting radio spins? Little Durk and all of them disrespecting women in their songs. Calling them all kind of bees and hoes and stuff like that. And objectifying them. Talking about how we'll smack that chick up if she disrespect me. And then we wonder why women don't trust us men. But then the numbers show via violence, what trust have we earned? At times. It just has to be discussed. I understand there's good men out there. This ain't y'all. But then this is some of us. And are we checking those males in the circles when they come around, letting them know, listen, Slim, you out of order. And we need to do more of that. Enough of us are not checking these young black men to say, why are you disrespecting like that? Or then we bump the music in our car. We like, oh man, it's just entertainment. You get what I'm saying? And then we're telling our daughters, well, it's okay if a dude call you a B or a hoe, as long as he throwing them dollar bills at you.
We just love ignorance. We love it. We love it.
And people could say that, oh, that's what do they call it? Elitism. And then what's the other one they do? Respectability politics. Y'all could call it that all day long, but you gotta. The song said, respect yourself. You know what I'm saying? Or check yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like we have to learn how to respect ourselves again, and we're not. And it's leading to this decay of this fabric, which is the black community. So when they look at some common sense, so they're talking about some solutions to this, is common sense gun laws, address systemic racial inequalities. Because at the end of the day, when we start looking at the government as far as what they can do, these are the things that we need to start focusing on. Like, what legislation is Joe Biden is going to bring into place to attack the issue of gun violence? And then what are we going to do to create more wealth or to have more job opportunities, right? But then after we create the job opportunities, I'm going to use DC as an example. In DC, almost every agency offers a free degree. Through the Department of Agriculture, they will send you to any agricultural school. That means you could go to FAMU, y'all. You could go to North Carolina A&T for free, room and board. All you have to do is spend, I think it's 8 years working for the Department of Agriculture, and you're not gonna be no custodian, and nothing wrong with being a custodian, but you're gonna come in as a GS9. I think those folks make like $70-something thousand a year, and then you're gonna get laddered to where you become a GS11 and a GS12. A GS12 can make easily over six figures automatically, right? Yeah, exactly. FAMU. You get a free, but who wants a degree through the Department of Agriculture? Because what happens is most people don't want an agricultural degree. They want, the sexy thing. They want, I want to be a doctor. I want to be this. But the thing is, once you work for the federal government as a GS12, me and Katrina could tell you, from there you could go the contracting route. And there's a ton of money in that. Tell them.
You can.
Yeah, ton of money in that. So, but we don't give our kids strategies to what they can use. So in DC, it's crazy to see that a city with so much opportunity for felons, you name it, there's a bunch of job opportunities here, and people will still rather be in the streets. So sometimes, even after we create the programs and after we attack redlining and all of that, What are we then doing to say, all right, how we're going to take advantage of these opportunities? Or are we going to still chase getting it out the mud in the streets when you don't have to? Like, you in the streets, but there's a sidewalk right there for a reason. You don't have to be in the streets. That's why they make sidewalks. Mm-hmm. Let's see. There was another stat here. In the in fact, black Americans do die from gun violence nearly at 2.4 times the rate of white Americans. On average, once again, over 12,000 black people die from gun violence each year. And then you had blown up years like 2021 coming out the pandemic. Things were super violent, where we had about 15,000 deaths on record. One of the highest numbers. Now, when we look at police shootings, right? The sharp disparities, I'll bring that one up again. In gun violence impacting black Americans also extend to black police shootings. More than 1 in 4 fatal police shootings involves a black victim. Through racial and ethnic groups, black Americans experience the highest rate of fatal police shootings. Police fatally shoot black Americans in 3 times the rate that they fatally shoot white Americans. One study showed that black Americans are just as likely to be shot and killed by law enforcement if they are unarmed as white Americans who are armed. Mm-hmm. Then, research also suggests that black-white disparities in police shootings were even more pronounced for non-fatal police shootings and injuries. For example, researchers found that in Florida, black people were approximately 3 times as likely as white people to be fatally shot by police, yet 5 more times as likely as white people to be non-fatally shot by police. Mm-hmm. So just shot in general. You're talking about if you're shot, some of those, even if it's not fatal, you may have a limb that never works the same. You may never breathe the same. If you get shot in the head, you may never be as cognitive as you was before. You see what I'm saying? So then there's the lasting effect of the shooting. And the violence continued grows. Between 1982 and August 2023, 78 out of the 147 mass shootings in the United States were carried out by white shooters. By comparison, the perpetrator was African American in 26 mass shootings and Latino in 12. When calculated as percentages, this amounts to 53%, 18%, and 8%, respectively. So I'm just, it's just crazy. Another stat I have here, the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention from 2020 shows that fatal firearm injuries cost a total of $290 million with an average of $9,000 per patient. But survivors of gun violence and ongoing costs can multiply exponentially. So there's a cost that wears down on us. And then once again, a lot of this is linked to redlining, exclusionary zoning, and mass incarceration. So, and it's crazy because once again, when we talk about how wealth plays a factor in it, we see that in 2021, the U.S. firearm deaths are as such. There was 48,000 total of white, 26,000 of them were white. So there were more white deaths, but keep in mind, there's more white people in America. We're over half of their number at 15,000 because there was a ballooning in 2021. Hispanics were at 5,000 deaths. And then Asians, once again, 576. Of all the gun violence, they only made up for 576 gun deaths in America. Wow. So we see automatically where wealth, right, and family values community, exactly, Katrina, plays a role in preventing these numbers. Yeah. Right? So some final thoughts here is, how do we end violence? So, any thoughts out there on how to end violence? Katrina, any thoughts? You can steal my answer. I don't care.
No, I was going to say, I think it starts at home. You end violence by setting core values. If we have more values in the home from the time the kids are born up through when they're teenagers, they won't be more inclined to choose a gun. Violence is taught based upon how you were raised. Yeah. Just like racism.
Yeah, exposure. And we seen this automatically reflected. Oh, shout out, we got the McKinneys in the building. Drop an air horn for you. We see this reflected in our show from last week when we talked about black fathers. Yeah. The people who are less likely to go to jail, the people who are less likely to graduate college, the people who are less likely to go to college or finish high school, become rapists, all these things. These are people who normally don't have a father in the house. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? So when you start looking at who's committing the crimes, who's not getting economically employed, who's not getting a job, they typically come from fatherless homes. And that's something as black people we can own. I get it. Redlining, trying to put us in positions to where we're clustered and on top of each other, that plays a role. And we're not ignoring that. And we have to hold our elected officials accountable for that. But what we can't do is act as if we're nowhere in the mix of the blame. We're the most watched shows on television are shows like Power, Snowfall, where a life of crime is celebrated. We celebrate Franklin selling drugs and destroying the black community. We celebrate Kanan. We celebrate Ghost. We celebrate Tariq for how they could get away with crime.
We celebrate Scarface too.
Yeah, Scarface hit the black community in the 80s. They loved that. Now, The Godfather, that hurt Italians too, because they also bought into it. But Scarface, the black community took the Scarface like never before in the 80s. They was like, man, I could be moving that coke like that. Oh, man, I can get rich to come up. The world is yours. So much rap is reflective of some of these old gangster movies to the point that we celebrate it. I remember my parents, they wouldn't let us watch Boys in the Hood or movies like that. And when they did let us watch those shows, we had to watch it under their supervision, and we were going to be lectured to no end about, you better act like Doughboy when you get older. You better not end up like so-and-so. Because this is what happened. And my father would say it all the time. A liar becomes a cheat becomes a thief, and then the thief becomes a murderer. He used to say that all the time. That was one of Herman's favorite things to say to us.
Yeah. I just think it starts at home. Like,
oh, yeah.
People just gotta, the thing is, we just love ignorance. Like, it's amazing to me how many times there's a podcast, there's a community member, there's a pastor, there's a friend who literally is encouraging people to do better, to choose a counterculture, and for some reason people love being ignorant. I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is, because at this point, every topic we bring up, it's like we're in a hamster in a wheel.
Yeah.
Like, what's the system? But we've heard this now for over like 50, 60 years. So what are you going to do about it?
Exactly.
And because you continue to choose violence, you choose guns, you choose being uneducated, you choose gang members, I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but after a while, people are going to be like, well,
I mean, what do you want?
What you gonna do?
And I like what Chris said, and Herman's kind of echoing these other things too. Lack of self-control, conflict resolution skills. You see what I'm saying? What we embrace, as you were stating, we embrace the ignorance. And then for me, I think the final thought comes to, along with what Katrina says, she's right. It starts at home. And then the other half of that is value of black life. And I think in order, the way I would phrase it, I'm not saying it's the way, just a way to phrase it, or how I looked at it is, one, when you look at value starts from within. It's being able to look in the mirror and value the person you're looking at, right? Do you value yourself? Do you love yourself enough, right? And then it's saying, well, if you love you, then it's being able to see the reflection of you in your black brothers and sisters and loving them like you would love yourself. This is why the Word of God talks about one of the marks of a Christian is you'll know by the love they show, right? Where's the love in putting hands on somebody all the time and reaching for a gun and killing them? There is a time to lay hands on somebody, all right? I do agree with that. But we celebrate it to a point where we're thirsty for it, right? We're looking for the smoke. And if anybody knows me, I can handle the smoke when it comes my way. And I'm definitely going to check somebody when they need to be checked. But I'm not flying across the country to go whoop somebody's behind. You see what I'm saying? That's crazy. Or if I have an issue with someone, I'm not going to invite myself somewhere to where I'm going to have a problem. Like, I'm not going to that bar where I know it's these group of guys that they don't like me, so I'm just waiting for the smoke to pop off. That's like inviting the smoke into your life. It's like knowing where, like, all right, some things I don't need to chase. But you have to have value in one another. And I think what it is it's so easy to kill one another when you don't see the value. And that value starts with within. Then it's looking out to your friends, your family, your community, seeing love of them, right? And then there's a way that we have to start having ownership, because everybody says, well, white people need to see love for us too. That's a harder thing to do, right? What's easier, for me to get black people to love themselves or to get white people to love us? that's going to be hard. So then how you attack the government or the system loving us is we have to then have ownership. Because see, people may not ever love you, but they got to respect what you own. And when we own things, it's better. So when you look at things like life insurance, ownership of real property and assets, and then that ownership mindset, like feeling like we own our communities, feeling like when I see a piece of trash in Hyattsville, well, I'm just gonna wait for the people to pick it up. Most time, me and Katrina, if we're walking or whatever, we pick it up ourselves and put it in the next trash cans because it was this that close. It's an ownership mindset, and when we have that, when people realize you value where you live, you value where you stay, it's crazy because back in the 1920s, and like we talked about this last time on the show, we see that we were marrying at a higher rate when we were poor. But back then, we took ownership in our communities back then. That's back when everybody in the community could whoop your butt. And they didn't do it because they wanted to put hands on your kids. They did it because they're like, I know your parents. They're good people. They wouldn't appreciate you out here acting a fool right now. I'm going to beat your butt. Not because I'm trying to hurt this child, because you're embarrassing your parents. And then I'm going to call your mama and tell her I beat your butt. And then guess what happens? You get home and your mom and your daddy beat your butt again. Not because the goal is to abuse you. It's because, hey, listen, you're disrespecting your community. You're disrespecting your family legacy. That's a problem. I'm not trying to say we have to go back to putting our hands on people's kids, but we're not even in a place now where we can say something to a child without fear of a parent coming back and wanting to fight you. Why are you talking to my daughter that kind of way? Your daughter was cussing and spray painting the side of the wall. That's why I said something. But I ain't none of your business. Yeah. We don't love each other enough to even give ourselves constructive criticism.
No, of course not. People just like living like that.
And Chris brought up a good point, and that's true. Most gun violence is between those that know each other. We have to learn to resolve conflicts in ways that don't end in violence. And that's true. 80% of crimes are done by people in close proximity to you. When you look at rape, burglaries, theft, all of that, it's typically done by your closest circle. And this is why you have to pick your friends carefully. And even you have to discern with your family which ones you can rock with all the time. Because some people may not mean you right, unfortunately. And then part of putting value on ourselves is something simple like life insurance. The government will then step in at a faster rate when they realize, ooh, this is going to put a dent in government and in policies when these people are life insurance. Now, as of 2020, there are actually more black people with insurance than white folks. But the catch is, Black Americans typically have 1/3 of the coverage of their white counterparts, according to a 2020 study by Haven Life, an insurance company. Both groups had less than the recommended coverage amount outlined in the study. 5 out of 10 time study of 5 to 10 times the annual income. So while we may have coverage to the rate of to about 55%, but the thing is, do we have suitable coverage? So a lot of us will, and then also. Another thing we found out, because wealth does play a part in these stats, we found that Black Americans often don't participate in American-sponsored retirement accounts and thus don't get the advantage of stock market growth. Only 44% of Black Americans have retirement savings accounts with a typical balance of around $20,000 compared to 65% of white Americans who have an average of $50,000 according to the Federal Reserve, and only 34% of African Americans own any stocks or mutual funds compared to more than half of white Americans. So how we structure, how we love our families, how we prepare for the future is vastly different, to the point that the group Prosperity Now predicts that the average net worth of Black Americans will be 0 by 2053. Gonna make it, baby. We just got 7 more minutes.
Yeah, I'm worried about it.
Yeah.
I'm like
about to fall out.
Yes.
I'm literally, she's about to fall into my arms, y'all. Like, Katrina looked at me. If I could look into the camera, she was like,
I'm tired. I have not slept.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's not like it's something you can control, you know. Just like people fall.
It seemed like because you seemed like you was lively just before the show, and then I think you sat down and it just killed you a different kind of way.
The thing
it's a little warm in the house too. I should have turned the air on.
Well, you know, you can control it. People wouldn't be falling behind the wheel, wouldn't they?
That's true.
It hits you when it hits you.
Yeah, I feel like it hit you like literally 5 minutes of the show. You just went.
It's not that I can control it.
I know. Well, anyways, we're about to wrap up, y'all. But we wanted to have this show about violence because, one, is it a systematic issue? Yes. And then, you got to get involved with your elected officials to address it. Is it a financial thing? Yes. So let's do better about our finances. But as Katrina stated earlier, it starts at home, right? And a lot of it is controllable from our end. Remember, even though there's a bunch of guns out there, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Mm-hmm. Guns are a tool. But at the end of the day, a person pulled the trigger. Mm-hmm. And suicides are up amongst black people as well. And a lot of it has to do, once again, the music. Because the music and then the drug usage stuff.
And mental health.
In mental health. A lot of the drugs that kids are using now are like depressants and downers. Which we know depressants and downers lead to more suicide. So being aware of that, right? So, hopefully today was helpful. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you share the stream. You see it right here in the corner. Give to the Nitty Gritty Show. Help us stay afloat, right? So we can keep on paying for this software and all this stuff we use to come before you. So quick shout out to Full Circle being our sponsor. Continue to do their thing. Herman said don't fall out. Also, once again, shout out to Marcia Hawkins turning 40. It was the 21st. Mm-hmm. Right? Turning 40 on the 21st. Shout out to my cousin Kenny Elam. Right?
Oh, and Brian.
Yeah. Oh, Brian's birthday. It's the same day, right?
He's the 26th.
The 26th. Mm-hmm. Oh, so in 2 more days. All right, so shout out to Brian. Happy birthday, cousin. And then also shout out to my pastor, Matthew Watley, turned 50. Celebrated his 50th birthday at church. We was shouting him out. Also, we like to celebrate Black love. Shout out to Curtis and Helena Royster, 40 years of marriage. That is awesome. And then shout out to the Beckett's, 23 years of marriage. So that's been the show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Katrina's going to take a nap.
Thank you.
And then tomorrow we'll be ready to go back at our day again. Go to the gym,
I'm not from the West Coast. I'm on the dime zone.
Yeah. I mean, and then you was just up late last night. I get it. But, y'all had a good time. Y'all went out there and had big fun.
Yeah.
Y'all had big fun. And now you're tired. But it's all good. Hey, thank you guys for watching. It's the Nitty Gritty Show. We out.
Take care. Tomorrow, and I don't want to cancel because we set